Hey, welcome. Welcome, welcome. This is My Imperfect Pursuit. I am Carrie Irvin, and I'm glad you're here. If you are new to the podcast, if you are new to listening to me, welcome. So honored you're here. A little bit about myself. I was in education for 20 years. I was a teacher, then a counselor, and I stepped out into faith with a lot of courage and all those things to become a Christian life coach for women. And then I decided to start a podcast. So here I am. Welcome. Glad you're here. Today, this is episode 57. And episode 57 is Have you become numb to your life? How indifference is not benign. Okay, I wanted to talk about this because, so often on here, if you've been listening to my podcast for some time, we talk all about emotions. Life coaches talk about whatever they're certified through. There's a basic line that a lot of life coaches come from, and it is how our thoughts affect our emotions and then how our emotions cause us to act. So, depending on how we were trained, the way I was trained, it was called the creation cycle. And so we have a thought, our thoughts generate emotions or feelings, and then our feelings cause us to behave a certain way, cause us to act. And so there we are. Now, a lot of us though, we dive into emotions, we dive into how every emotion, there's no such thing as a bad emotion. Yes, there are negative emotions. I talked about anger a few episodes ago about how, I was walking around in anger, or I tried to deny it, about the situation of growing up in the household with a dad who was abusive. And so I was angry for a long time, but I thought I shouldn't be angry because anger makes people act a certain way. And I didn't start unpacking all that until my 40s, guys. I'm 45 years old. And so I didn't start unpacking that until the last few years with the help of the teachings and trainings of my life coach. And I saw how revolutionary this was in my life and how it released me in so many ways. And that is a part of the reason I wanted to become a life coach, because I wanted to do for other women what my life coach did for me. Now, talking all about emotions, anger, happiness, sadness, joy, elation, anxiety, frustration, all of them, right? We talk a lot about a lot of things. There's really nothing that I'm not going to talk about on here, because I just feel like there's so much in society that we need to talk about, that people don't need to feel like they're on an island by themselves and suffering through whatever it is they're suffering through. So, with that being said, I wanted to talk about what we might think the opposite of emotions is, what we think the opposite of that is, and that is not feeling anything at all. And what I would say is indifference. Some of you might say, I feel numb to it, or I just don't care anymore. But I like the word indifference, because indifference kind of sounds to me, just even saying it, oh, I'm just indifferent to that. How many times have you said it? I know I've said it multiple times in my life. Oh, I could care less. Or I'm, when you say that, that doesn't really make sense anyway, but I'm indifferent. I'm indifferent to that. And oh, that just sounds kind of a polite way of like, I'm just not going to feel it. But when we become indifferent to things, when we become too indifferent things about our lives, um, it's pretty poisonous. It's pretty toxic, even though that word toxic is overused in today's society. But the true meaning of what toxic is and what that means, I mean, it can be that way. So I'm here to ask you, how has indifference affected how you show up in your life? Maybe the situation in your life just feels so hard. It feels like it's just too much. So instead of going through all the feelings and all the emotions, you just become indifferent to it. How is that causing you to show up in your life? Now, you might think it's okay. I'm showing up okay. I am not an emotional mess. I am not a hot mess. I'm There's no emotion. I don't care. I'm good to go. But I need you to really ask yourself, and I really want you to dive in, because it will affect how you show up, because indifference is not benign. Indifference, in fact, it has very, very deep roots, and it is very destructive. God did not create us as a people to not care about things, to not feel about things. So I'm asking you again, how have you, like, or how has indifference caused you to show up to your life? And have you become indifferent to something in your life? To fill in the blank. Maybe for you, it's a goal or a dream. You've tried something, you keep trying at it, and it's just not quite panning out the way you would want, or it's not even starting to pan out at all. It's not even starting to work in the direction you want. So you just kind of gave up. You thought, well, that's just not for me, or that just wasn't in the cards for me. I just don't care. So maybe you gave up on goals. Maybe you gave up on dreams completely. You just became indifferent to it. I don't care. You know why? You don't care because the caring part was too hard. It was too heavy. So it's easier to say, I don't care. I'm indifferent to it. So are you indifferent to your goals or dreams? Okay, so I'm going to ask this question next. Have you become indifferent to somebody in your life? Have you become indifferent to your marriage, to your spouse? Has marriage in your life, has it just been hard? Has it been something where you guys you're not on the same page and you haven't been for quite some time? You feel like they don't get you and you don't understand them, all the things, and just all that misunderstanding, all those feelings of that I don't know who this person is anymore has caused you to say, you know what, I just don't care. So indifference moves in. Okay. Have you become indifferent to your children? Maybe those of you who have adult children. I've seen this in my coaching before. Like, I just don't care anymore because it hurts to care. And that's kind of where the core of this is. It hurts to care about my dreams that are not quite panning out as I wanted, or it's taking too long. I just it hurts to actually care about my marriage because I don't know what to do. I don't know how to move forward in this, and I feel like I'm stuck. So I'm just going to become indifferent. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to burst your little bubble here. When you say, I don't care, when you say, I'm just this wheel I'm on, I'm just going to become indifferent. The thing is, you're still on this wheel. You're still stuck. You still feel stuck. You're just trying to numb yourself from it. So now you're adding another layer in fact, you're adding another layer of emotion, even though we think indifference is not an emotion. So have you become indifferent to your dreams, to your goals, to your spouse, maybe to your adult children? Maybe it's not adult children. Maybe you still have children living under your roof that would be considered like not adult children, minors, whatever. And maybe that's been a struggle. Maybe you feel like they're just a very complicated child. That it's been a lot of challenges with this kid, and whether it be something that the child is choosing or maybe something they're not choosing. And you find yourself becoming indifferent because it hurts to care. Okay. I want you to ask yourself that. Have you become indifferent to your job? Maybe your job at one point, you really cared about it. There was something that you really liked to show up to. You loved walking through the doors, and whatever it was you were doing for the day, that was something you enjoyed. And you felt you got joy from that, right? But something changed along the way. And maybe you feel like since then you've changed. Maybe you changed along the way, and indifference has set in. I just don't care. I'm just indifferent to my job. It's just a place I show up and I get the things done that I've got to get done. And I'm looking at the clock. I'm looking at my watch. When do I get off? When am I able to leave, get in my car and take off? Whatever it may be. And so how has indifference caused you to show up to your job? How has it caused, so I'm going to work backwards. I ended with job. I'm going to go back. So how has it caused you to show up differently to your job once you became indifferent? How has it caused you to show up indifferently to your children once you felt like, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in this car called indifference and take a ride? How has it caused you to show up indifferent to them? How about your marriage? Is it going the direction you want? Is it going down a path that feels more loving? And yeah, there might be hurt. They may have done something. Maybe you did something. Maybe there's a lot of something that both of you did. And so And instead of talking about it, instead of working through it, we're just going to become indifferent. So how is that causing your marriage? How is it unfolding when indifference takes the wheel? Okay. So what about your goals and dreams? When you have indifference set in and you no longer, I just don't care about my goals and dreams, yet you still think about them, right? How is it causing you to show up in your everyday life when you become indifferent to those goals and to those dreams? So I want you to ask yourself this question, because even though we think indifference, like I keep saying, we think it's benign, it's not. In fact, it's very destructive and it's very sneaky. And I feel like it is one of the sneakiest ways the enemy can get to us is by making us feel like just don't care about it. Because when you care, bad things happen. You end up getting hurt. So the way to not get hurt is to just be indifferent. And our brains kind of want to do that too. Our brains are wired to protect us and to conserve energy. So as a result of that, sometimes when it feels like, here we go again, I got to talk to my spouse, or I've got to show up at this job, or whatever it may be, or that goal or dream, and it just all the feelings of that came with that particular part of our life, and they just feel so heavy. They feel hard. Maybe they're full of more negative emotions versus positive. You might feel more angry about it. You might feel more frustrated versus excited and hopeful. That used to be what was there, and now it's something different. So instead of feeling all the heavy emotions, I'm just wanting to survive in my life, not thrive, but survive. I'm just going to become indifferent. And that is one of the biggest lies the enemy will tell you. And I want to call it out. And that's why I want to talk about these things, especially on this podcast for anybody listening, because I feel like if once we become indifferent to one thing in our life, if we allow that one thing, and you're like, well, this is hard, Carrie. If you knew how it was to walk through this and to feel all these emotions, then you would probably try to numb yourself out too. Just become indifferent. I'm going to tell you, it starts bleeding into other areas of our life. Indifference doesn't just stay in its little compartment. And another way I'm going to burst your bubble, your life is not full of like these little compartments. You can't keep your life compartmentalized. That's not how it works. You can't be just surviving at your job every single day and try to come home to your home life and think that that's not going to affect your home life. That how you are at your job and all the feelings and everything you're walking through, even though you might not think you're walking through it, you just think it's just not going to show up when I come home. No, it will. And vice versa. Maybe you've tried to become numb or indifferent to something in your home life. Things are too tough at home, so I'm just going to become indifferent to it. I just don't care, but I'm going to go to work because I feel it there. I feel like somebody there. I feel seen there, whatever it may be. It's going to bleed over. So you have to check this. This is another one of those things I always say, you got to check yourself, but you do. You have to check yourself because we're human and we're flawed. And I'm going to tell you, I bought into indifference as well. I bought into indifference on a lot of things, like, it doesn't matter. And I'm just supposed to maybe show up and get a paycheck. And that's all that matters. And yet I was missing out on so much, not only at my job, but it was eating away at me. But I didn't see it because I just thought, oh, I'm numb. I'm indifferent to it. And relationships. Oh, it's just too hard to work on that relationship. I just don't care. But the bottom line was I did care. I did care. So that is why I chose indifference. And just because I chose to be indifferent, I'm doing like air quotes for those of you that are listening and not watching. I chose to, be indifferent. The problem is I'm still caring. It's still there. It didn't go away just because I'm like, okay, I'm indifferent now and it washed it away. That's not how it works. It's still there. So I want you to ask yourself, are you indifferent about something in your life? Have you stopped caring about something in your life that you're like, I really probably, this is something I should care about, that I need to care about. I know I said the word should. I always say, I don't say the word should because it's like holds us to a level of perfection. But this is something like I need to care about my kids. I need to care about my goals and my dreams. But once I find indifference, what ends up happening it just feels better just to hop in that little pool of indifference, but I'm telling you, it's all a facade. It's not true. And that's why I keep saying that's one of the biggest ways the enemy can get to you is by making you say it's okay to not care about this aspect of your life because you're going to say, you know what, you're right. It's just one thing. It's just one thing. And then before you know it, now it's two things because, well, if I can be indifferent about my marriage, I'll just whatever. It's this relationship over here is tough about my friend, like, whatever, whatever. And so I'm just going to be indifferent about my friendships, or I'm going to be indifferent about my relationship with my children, adult children or young children. I mean, it goes all ways. And so I want you to ask yourself that. This is a very important question. What have I become indifferent to? And how is it? So it's kind of two questions. And how is it making me show up in my life? And I know when you're thinking about this, or if you're writing it down, if you're a journaler, and if you're not journaling, I used to not be a journaler, a person that journaled. I'm just whatever. I'm going to tell you now that when you like, if you're to write this down, your answer will be, you will say, you know what? Like, I'm not showing up the way I want. I am not showing up as my best self. Remember, not your perfect self. You're going to hear me say that over and over, but my best self. Because that right there, when God says, I need you to show up as your best self, because I've woven you with so many gifts, I've woven you with so many talents, and to show up into your life right where you're at with all these gifts and talents, when you allow indifference to set in, it takes those away. It diminishes those. Like what it does is it dims them. Now, nothing can ever take away. I say took away. I say it takes it away, but nothing can ever take away something that God gave you. Nothing can take away the talents and the gifts that he gave you. Absolutely nothing. But we can hide them and we can try to bury them and say, it's no big deal. And indifference is something where that can happen. So, guys, I just want you to ask yourself these two questions. Are you indifferent to something in your life? And then how is it making you show up to that area? And then if you really get into it, how is it bleeding into other areas? So if you're a listener, guys, I would love for you to reach out and tell me, like if you watch me on YouTube, you can put it in the comments, or if you just want to message me on Facebook or Instagram, you can follow me on there. But guys, it's important. I'm curious, how is indifference showing up in your life, and how is it making you show up? And it's not good. Indifference is not something that you need to latch onto. And I'm telling you now, if this is something you've subscribed to, for I don't care if it's been the majority of your life, it is something you can undo. It's not something that's just stuck on you and it's too late, it's too far gone. Absolutely not. And this is something that we talk about in my coaching, in my group coaching in Unleashed. We talk about how indifference is in fact not indifferent, how indifference is not benign. We talk all about emotions, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we talk how it is important to feel. We fight against that indifference that wants to set in. It is a natural tendency for us to say, I just don't care anymore. I've been there myself. I've done it. And it didn't help me at all. It actually, it hurt me more, than it ever could have helped. It was never intended to help. It just felt like a quick way to fix it or just to do away with it. I'm just going to numb it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to become indifferent. And that is why so many people become addicted to so many different things, is because they don't want to deal with the emotions. So they reach out to external things to help them numb the emotions, drugs, alcohol, if they're a shop addict. I mean, there's all types of addictions, pornography, all these things allow people to not feel emotions that are difficult to feel. It numbs them in a way. So indifference, guys, it has very, very deep roots. It has roots that are very destructive. And if you find yourself in that and you are not sure, okay, Carrie, how do I do this though? I've been indifferent to this for so long, or or maybe you're just new to it and you're like, oh my gosh, I just realized I've been doing this for like the last few weeks, but I'm not sure how to undo it. I'm afraid to start caring again. Reach out to me. get yourself into Unleashed, my group coaching program for women. I also have one-on-one coaching spaces available. I have a few spaces available for that if you prefer the one-on-one approach. But reach out to me and we can see what works for you. Unleashed is $99 a month, and you can join in and, test it out for a month and see how it is. And also, the first 10 women to sign up, I do have a few spaces left, get a free one-on-one 30-minute coaching with me. So give it a shot, guys. This is not, that's why I created Unleashed. That's why I'm here talking to you, because I want to talk about the hard things. I want to talk about the things that sometimes as Christians, we just want to sweep under the rug. And I feel like they need to be talked about because we are all living in a world that it's not perfect. It's got a lot of hurt in it. And so we walk around in this world and we're obviously human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have things said or done to us that hurt. And we need to talk about it. We need to understand that even though this world is flawed, God says, hey, but I don't want you to walk around in such a way where you feel shame or guilt, or you feel like you don't need to feel. You're going to be indifferent. That's not how he wants us to show up to our life. So reach out to me. Let me know how it goes. I'm so glad you tuned in. I hope this helped. I want the road to this to be get yourself unlocked from indifference is to ask yourself the question, am I indifferent to something? And if you can just name one thing, good deal. That's awesome. Be honest with yourself. You don't have to share it with me, obviously. And then two, how is it causing me to show up to my life? Because you're going to see something. And then dive even deeper. If you can say, yeah, I there's at least one thing in my life that I've shown up indifferent to, is it starting to leak over into other areas? And this is where the change and transformation happens, is by what was kept in the dark, what we don't want to be out there, by bringing it to the light. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm glad you're here. I am honored you're listening. And if you like, you're going to hear me say this, but if you like my episode, and go ahead and rate and review it. If you didn't like it, that's fine too. And that helps me improve it. If there's topics you would like to hear covered, I'd love to hear that too. But if you go there and you rate and review it, because it helps my podcast become more available to the general public, to people out there that are looking for a podcast, a Christian-based podcast that is not afraid to talk about all the things, where someone's going to sit here and say, listen, my childhood wasn't perfect. And for a long time, I walked in a lot of doubt. I walked in a lot of anger because of a situation that was out of my control. That's kind of my story. Whoop, real quick, that was my little whoop, quick noise. Sorry. I do sound effects. Those of you that are friends with me know that I have a lot of sound effects. But I also want you to know that helps other people. And when we can talk about things and you can hear that you are not alone in this, that other people have walked through this and they have found hope. They no longer fear the negative emotions. They welcome the negative, that no matter how dark and desolate it seemed at sometimes, that they were able to find light and joy. And that all comes from God's goodness and grace. Because I'll tell you what, through all those dark, dark times in my life, when I wasn't turning to him, he was still there. So he's a pretty kind God. All right, guys, thanks for listening. And until next time.